Hey all you cool cats and kittens! We are live with the old school Q&A stream. However, you may notice that our cameras are not on. It's mainly because we haven't had haircuts in a while. No, not really. It's because the bandwidth restrictions are causing quite a lot of lag. So to bring you as high quality of a stream as possible, it will be all on voice. Sorry about that, guys. Before we kick off, going to go through some announcements. We've recently released a news statement regarding how COVID-19 has affected Jagex. It outlines our plans to continue developing the game for you and gives insight on what you can expect in the coming weeks. Take a look by using !COVID. We also, yesterday, released a new Gillinor Gazette for the month of April. This includes some of our insight onto a settings menu overhaul and the Hallowed Sepulchre. You can read more about that by using !Gazette. And lastly, we've just released an announcement on a 3-day 1v1 tournament. We will be hosting that from the 17th of April to the 19th. We'll discuss more about that on the stream later, but if you want to see the announcement, use !1v1. Cool. I think that's all the announcements. And we should just start with saying who's on the live stream. It says on your screen, but we've got myself, Mod Acorn, Mod Husky.
Hello.
Mod Lenny.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Mod Sween.
Good afternoon.
And Mod West.
Hey everyone.
Hopefully everyone knows how your voices sound. I mean, we'll talk throughout the day. We'll try to say your names like Mod West. But this one's for everyone. How is everyone so far, working from home? How are you guys?
Doing okay, I guess. Going a little bit stir crazy, but I'm getting by. Getting used to working from home slowly.
Yeah, I'm quite liking it. It's quite relaxing. Getting a lot more sleep. That's just nice. And no time on the buses, which is fantastic. So it's going well.
Yeah, I typically tend to start later and end later as a result, so apart from that, it's going fairly well. It's nice to have the dog company throughout the entire day, though. I wish we could take our dogs to work.
I'm enjoying it, honestly. I don't have to commute. That's fantastic. That's hours back in my day. I think I've said it before on one of our remote streams. It's quite difficult to separate work from, I guess, normal life. I finish work on my desktop in my back room. If I want to play games, I'm on my desktop in my back room. So sometimes there's a tendency to kind of overlap. Generally, yeah, I kind of rate it. When the situation goes back to normal, I wouldn't mind doing more remote work.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to readapt to normal work life.
Yeah, I think it's just showing me. I like the option of working from home. I like having the ability to do it, but I'm not such a fan of having to do it constantly.
Yeah.
I do enjoy
communication.
I enjoy having to be able to just take a afternoon shower. I think even G mentioned that. It's just it's just one of those things where you're might as well just go and take a shower.
Yeah. Also doing exercise as well is so much easier because you just get out into your garden, just run around a bit.
What is one of the things that you will not take for granted when we're no longer on lockdown?
Ooh.
Going to the gym. No more excuses. No more missed sessions now. No more skip leg day. I'm going a bit. I say I'm enjoying working from home, but not being able to go to the gym is really kind of getting at me.
You can do all that stuff with from home though. Just got to find the right tools.
I don't have any platforms to deadlift on or squat racks in my house, unfortunately.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think I miss just being able to go and get a takeaway. It's not nothing really nearby me is open, so I do just miss not having to cook. So I'm definitely gonna take that for granted.
I think I just miss being able to sit around with other people and do absolutely nothing. Instead of sitting around on my own doing nothing, just somebody else being there.
Maybe not so much take for granted. I always enjoy walking the dog, but I think the change for me is that's now become like the highlight of my day, the one time we actually get to go out together and go for a walk. Because right now we do it with my other half, like, alternates, and she will do like the evening and I'll do the morning, etc. But it just, you know, I think I appreciate that time a little bit more now.
Well, we've kind of got the intros out of the way. Hopefully everyone can differentiate your voice, but I will try my best to direct questions to everyone. We'll start off with the topic that tends to be the most requested update on every tweet that we do for the past probably couple of months, which is the 1v1 tournament, but more particularly the Dead Man mode. So, Modsween, for those of us that may not have read the blog yet, can you give us a short summary of what this 1v1 tournament is?
Sure thing. So it's going to span from Friday the 17th until Sunday the 19th of April. Friday and Saturday will consist solely of regional qualifiers. So we've got an APAC, which is, I don't know, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's like Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Asia and all that. A European regional qualifier, a North American Western, and a North American Eastern. 128 participants per regional qualifier. Each qualifier bracket will see the final 8 advance into what we call like the grand finals or the global finals. I can't remember what we said on in the end. And that'll be fought on Sunday. And what makes this a bit different to the things we've done in the past is that everybody's going to use the same, or nearly the same loadout. There are 2 options to choose from. So there's complete parity in gear, complete parity in equipment. We're paying attention to players' complaints of the past when we're looking at things like ping and latency, because like previous tournaments, so say Deadman and like the final stages, there have been a few gripes where, you know, let's say somebody like Ditterbit, who's based in Hong Kong, is having to fight on like a North American server. So what we're trying to pay attention to is giving them the opportunity to kind of progress in their own bracket, in their own region, the servers hosted a bit closer, so say like Australia. And then in the grand finals, we're going to be allowing the players to alternate between their preferred region, and then deciding matches are being hosted on a kind of a more neutral world. What else to summarize it with? I should probably look at the blog. That would probably help me summarize it. I'm not going to. I'm going to freestyle it.
Well, you've mentioned the loadouts now.
Yeah.
Why did you choose those specific gear loadouts? And was it you that chose those gear loadouts?
It wasn't. I worked with a few different players and content creators to kind of get the ideal one. What we wanted was, so let's think back to August 2017, we did the 1v1 PvP championship. We allowed players to kind of choose any gear they wanted, and they'd go for like max setup, obviously, and like the very best tanky equipment. What it meant was that the matches actually took quite a long time. They weren't very entertaining to watch. So that's why we settled on the likes of like 70 defense and capping it at, I think, Barrow's armor, Barrow's equipment, just so it's a bit more entertaining, hits will be a bit higher, and the emphasis on having the tri-grid will be on skill rather than I'm going to kind of range tank and bolt and step under and bolt and step under.
I feel like it's going to be interesting to see how different people can still play with the same loadouts. I think you're going to see a lot of... I wonder if more people will choose between the 2 spec weapons, which one will be more popular in the end as well.
In an ideal world, it'd be great to allow players to kind of customize their loadouts accordingly, but if we want to have like a really smooth tournament, then the best thing to do is just to really restrict loadouts. If we want to get players from fight 1 quickly into fight 2 and into fight 3 and so on, by having parity across all the loadouts, it makes it much simpler for us to do. We don't have to start checking inventories and start checking gear and that kind of stuff.
And so we're not going to do that as much because we have specific gear loadouts. But what are we going to do in terms of monitoring when it comes to the 1v1 tournament, whether it's like cheating or making sure someone has someone to fight? How are we going to monitor that?
So in terms of making sure people have something to fight, we've got the brackets being populated by the sign-ups. We're going to review the people who have signed up to make sure there aren't any duplicates, no duplicate accounts, to make sure, as best we can, that the players actually reside in the regions they're in. Because there are so few spaces, so 512 in total, 128 per region, I don't expect there to be a shortage of players. If for whatever reason there aren't 128 legit players per bracket, then the bracket will adapt accordingly, and it might be that if there are like an odd number, then some players are given a buy into the next round. But if there are only 64 players in a certain region, so be it, then we'll fight with 64. In terms of monitoring, we've got anti-cheating resource who will be on hand for the duration of the tournament. I'm not going to say what the type of things they're looking for, but if players are cheating, then we'll take action and we'll remove them from competition and also take action against their account. The actual action we're taking is listed on the news post. I think it involves account ban, banning alt accounts as well, removing alt accounts from ever being able to play in other competitive events like any future Deadman or future tournaments.
Will it be live streamed as well?
It will, yeah. So the regional stuff on the Friday and Saturday, we're going to be working with a few different content creators. So we're going to give them access to the worlds and they can cast it themselves. But then when it comes to the grand finals on the Sunday, we'll be casting it on an old school live stream. So we've got Foe, Aiza, and Perp confirmed as casting, and we're still trying to kind of like still trying to finalise the fourth cast we'll be using. We should be in a good position to announce that next week.
So we've discussed the 1v1 tournament, but we also are saying after the 1v1 tournament, we're going to be doing a Deadman mode. When is that, and what more information can we share to the players about Deadman?
So Deadman will be kicking off on the 30th of May. 30th of May? 1st of May. And will be going on until the 30th of May. We basically wanted to give the players something a bit longer than the usual tournaments that we've offered in the past, but not quite as long and drawn out as the seasons. So what we'll be doing is kind of combining the two into one this time round. With the tournament starting off on the 1st, we will then have about 4 weeks to build up your account, which is open to everyone like the seasons normally would be. And then on towards the end of the tournament, basically the day before the finale, we'll be shutting the worlds down and bringing it back up with just one world for the final day. At this point, it will be restricted to the top 2,000 players, who can then sign in and battle us out throughout the finale, throughout the permadeath and the 1v1s, as they normally would in the tournament. Aside from that, it's kind of, we're currently still working on some of the balance between what makes it a tournament or what makes it a season, deciding what features exactly that would normally be enabled in a season but not a tournament we might want to consider enabling for this.
So, Mod Lenny, you are one of the developers behind bringing Deadman mode back.
Yeah.
How has that been going for you in terms of how long has it been taking to get some of this old code? Are you making changes to it? And has it been difficult to do? Or is it something that you felt more comfortable doing because you've done it before?
So we started on it a little over 2 weeks ago, I believe, which hasn't been so much developing it, more looking over the script that's already there and actually jumping into a sort of local Deadman world, playing through it and seeing what happens. And basically just looking out for any issues we might find, updating anything that we realise needs updating, and just trying to make sure that exactly as it was before last time when we had the tournament run, it should be good to go again this time round. There's only been sort of a couple of little changes, like I say. We've been looking at, since we're not doing a season and tournament separately, which features might want enabling or disabling that are only available in one of the two, usually. We've also looked at sort of resource distribution for potions and food, looking at enabling mysterious emblem drops on the global drop table and re-enabling the emblem store to allow players to get them through those sorts of means. It's been kind of an interesting thing. Like I say, not very actually development driven, more just reading through what's there and playing through what's there and seeing how it goes.
I think you remember you saying that you were having a difficult time like logging in like 24 accounts at once while from home just to like test Deadman. Is that still an issue, or do you have some volunteers?
Well, so in the office we had a way to work around the number of accounts we could sign in. We were kind of originally restricted to about 2 accounts a person, and then I don't remember what his mod name was in the end. I want to say Mod Atlas, the engine developer who left last year, enabled us basically to be able to sign into more than 2 or 3 accounts in the office. Working from home, we had a couple of issues with that just not working on our home PCs outside of the Jagex network, which we had to work around, and luckily I managed to with the help of Modboko. But it's pretty difficult to try and run 10 or so accounts, especially any more than that, on my own on one PC. So I kind of recruited the help of a few different people, Mod Tide, Mod Curse, Mod Flippy, to just jump in with 10 accounts each and run through it when we can.
Are you hoping to run a beta so that the players can also help test or find things before the actual tournament date?
Yes, so with the tournament starting on the 1st of May, I believe we will be looking at running beta the week prior to that, on the 24th, though somebody might want to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
It could change, I mean, but we plan to at least, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Mod Sween,
So,
will there be any prizes for this Deadman tour?
there sure will. We don't know just what they are yet, I'm afraid. So if you notice from the 1v1 tournament, we are working, and we're very excited to be, working with HyperX. They're helping prize the tournament. We are pursuing equally as exciting prizing partnerships for Deadman. We're still in the negotiation stage. Mod Rogue's hard at work getting those prizes signed off. So we'll communicate that once we know what they are. There will also be cash prizes available. Again, we're still finalising what that amount is going to be. And with the 1v1 tournament mentioned earlier, we're giving £6,000 to charity. We'll be making a similar but larger donation to charity alongside the Deadman prizing. So TLDR is yes, there will be prizes, a big charitable donation, some prizing from a kind of industry partner, and then also cash prizing for winners.
I think it's really great that we can offer charity prizes as well as prizes to players. So it's just kind of like bringing the community together in this difficult time as well. It's a nice thing to have. So on top of the Deadman tournament that we are definitely having, if that one is successful, do you envision us doing more?
I think there's definitely some potential for it. Yeah, I think since we've sort of started these discussions around compacting the season and tournament into one thing like this, it's kind of gotten a lot of us thinking that this could be a good way to go around it. But kind of running it a little more rarely, maybe we'll meet somewhere in the middle of people getting bored eventually as the season goes on for longer and they just lose interest in it, versus just a 1 week tournament not quite scratching the itch enough. So hopefully this sort of midpoint will give us something good to work with that we can look at doing more of in the future.
It also means people will care about their accounts for longer, right? You know, right now people will just get the bare minimum and quit, and they didn't care about trying to get any meaningful items in the preparation for the tournament.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of sort of players who would build their accounts up just enough to get into the top 2,000 throughout the season, and then not bother with the rest. And they weren't any more invested in it than that. They just wanted to be able to compete in the tournament. And by having it kind of open throughout the entire duration of the tournament and then restricted to the top 2,000 just in the finale, that kind of helps to alleviate that, I think.
Modswain, when can you expect to give more information about Deadman in like a news post to the players so that they can have it all on a website rather than just on this live?
Ideally, as soon as possible is the answer. Like Lenny said, we still have a few content decisions we need to make. We still need to finalise the date of the beta. We still need to finalise pricing. It's worth noting as well, so we had ideas for all this cool stuff we're doing for like the COVID situation, for some weeks now, if not maybe nearly a month. But it's not just about like getting people on board to do it, or making the content happen. But so look, like with tournaments and competitions, we have to have terms and conditions in place for different regions. So there's lots of like legal back and forth. And the same thing's going to have to happen with Deadman. So we might be in a position where we are able to share more information about content, but we can't share information about the pricing because we're waiting on legal, or we're waiting on one of the industry partners we're looking to work with in terms of their commitment to pricing. We're still waiting on that kind of thing. We will get it to players as soon as it's ready to get to players. We understand that there's like a lot of strategizing that needs to happen among like individual players and their communities. So we want to try and aid that as best we can, but we'll share information when we can.
Are we expecting lockdown of areas this time around as well? No one knows. We shall see. So moving on from Deadman, we mentioned the Gazette that we released yesterday, which includes information on an insight behind the Hallowed Sepulchre, as well as a settings menu overhaul. Mod West and Mod Husky, what was the design idea behind a very Saradomin-esque crypt in the middle of a vampire capital?
You can answer first.
The Sepulchre's essentially sort of left over from when Saradominist sort of ruled Hallowed. So before Draken and his vampires took over Mauritania, it was quite a nice land. It wasn't more swampy and disgusting, and it had some nice villages and cities all for Saradomin. And during that time, they built a place to bury their dead. Got to put the body somewhere. So they built this big old sepulchre, and they put lots of magic, lots of holy, things protecting it from evil, essentially. So it sort of stayed protected over the years, and it's sort of just become as part of the Dark My City, but the vampires themselves can't really go near it. So it's just sort of stayed around, and that's sort of the basic idea behind the sepulchre.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you're building content, right, you're like, okay, we've got some loot, we've got some magical traps. Why haven't the vampires gone here, right? If there's all this loot here, there's all this stuff, they would have just taken it for themselves, right? They rule the area. And it's kind of just coming up with what is the reason behind that. And this being a remnant of the times past, as West said, kind of just makes a lot of sense, right? Being a hallowed or holy place, for another word for it. The vampires being unable to enter just kind of has a really nice thematic. Sir, you snuck into Darkmire, you're there. So you get access to do all this stuff that the vampires couldn't. So
I've noticed that we both say it differently. Is it sepulchre or sepulchre?
Sepulchre.
Oh, do I say sepulchre? I don't know.
Yes, you do. I didn't want to call you out, but
No, wait, what did you say, Husky?
Sepulchre?
Sepulchre, okay. Sepulchre. yeah, it's different emphasis, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people spell it with ER instead of RE as well, and all the comments on Reddit.
Yeah.
It's an interesting word.
On a non-lore based theme, it's also nice working in a different area, because the last place I created was a very Zamorakian dungeon for the area outside the Nightmare. It's nice to have a complete change in sort of aesthetics, so more Saradomin based symbology rather than Zamorak. So it's nice to mix that up.
Mod West, how can players visually tell when they're on different floors of the sepulchre? So there's 5 floors, and if we're not paying attention to the chat box, we might not be able to know what floor we're on. How did you make it so that we know what floor we're on?
Yeah, for sure. This occurred to me right at the beginning. I wanted this feeling of as you get further into the sepulchre, that you feel yourself delving down. It's going to change visually. The colors are going to change. So as you first go in, it's going to be green. It's going to be quite moldy. It's like the top layer is close to the surface. It's had the most traffic come through. It's had the most damage done to it. It's been raided the most. So essentially, this will be very bare in terms of treasure. All the gold's been sort of chipped away, taken from the sepulchre itself. But as you get further and further down, there'll be more elements of gold and jewelry and stuff lying around untaken. So the idea is it just gets more and more fancy and elaborate as you get. So it'll be very easy to figure out exactly where you are in the sepulchre, whether you're on floors 1, 2, 3, or 4, or even 5.
I think Mod G made an amazing animation with that sword like boomerang almost, where it
Yeah,
started
so-
off as a boulder, this giant rock being thrown at you.
Yeah.
It's a really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the players to see all the different traps, because that's one of the things that I kind of decided fairly recently, actually, within the last maybe 3 weeks, that originally we've essentially got like 3 tiers of each trap, right? And they're a bit more difficult. And originally they were a bit sparsed out, just as and when I wanted things to be a bit more difficult on a floor. But now they're kind of tied to the floor itself. So as you go down, you'll instantly notice, oh, all the statues I've seen look nicer, right? And then you get to tier 3, and wow, like, you know, these are really expensive statues. I can't wait for players to see them, because it looks pretty sick. As well, like that sword that you see the statue throw, the tier 3 version looks beautiful.
Yeah. Can't wait to see that in game and have players get destroyed by it. It's gonna be great.
I do personally feel like we should keep some element of the bots coming at you, just in some capacity.
No. so the tier 3 projectile trap instead throws like max melee characters at you. Is that how we're doing it?
I mean, we can arrange that. If it was good though.
We mentioned different style traps that players have to pay attention to. But what is the punishment if a player fails a specific trap?
Sure. So I think the thing to remember about this is it's supposed to be a skilling training method, right? This isn't combat. This isn't supposed to be overly dangerous in like what you would consider PVM to be, right? So the punishment for failing a trap is that you take, I think it's like a token amount of damage. I think the most you can take is like a 6, 7, or 8. I don't know where it sits on there. But the point is that your time will be reduced. So as you make your way back to the start of the trap, you'll notice that the timer that is tracking how much time you've got left in this place has gone down by a chunk because you failed the trap. So it's more about punishing the player for the amount of time they've spent left. And because if you don't make it to the end of the floor, when that timer hits 0, you lose any XP you've potentially earned over the course of the floors you've completed so far. So it felt very strange to have this sort of double punishment, and you're also losing XP and you're also getting hit like 20s by fire and stuff. So it just felt like the damage is more there to be symbolic of, it would feel weird if you got hit by fire and didn't take damage. So
I think that was
yes.
one of the first things I brought up when you originally had the design document. I was like, it feels weird to just be hit by a flying sword and not actually take any damage.
Yeah, for sure. And we obviously want it to make sense in that sort of regard.
Will every floor be the same when you go into it every time? So it's always the same, that level 1 looks like this, level 2 always looks like this, level 3, etc.
Yeah, so every floor is... So floor 1 is always the same, floor 2 is always the same, etc. The difference is where the player will be spawned, right? So you can imagine the layout of floor 1 is exactly the same, but if you are spawned in the northeast corner, you have a different set of traps to make your way to finish that floor compared to someone who spawned in the south. Floors 1 and 2 have 4 variations, 3 and 4 have 2 variations for floor 5, but that does mean you should get just a little bit of variance in the treasure opportunities you'll encounter and the traps you'll have to overcome. Naturally, some floors might be slightly quicker than others, but because the XP from floor 1 is probably going to be so much lower compared to the other, it's not going to really be beneficial to reset floor 1 when it's already a fairly quick floor to begin with. So I think it'll just add that sort of variety to it where, you're sort of deciding, ooh, do I go to floor 4? Well, if I get the north route, it's going to take me longer than the south route. And you've got that element of strategy in there, making sure you save enough time regardless of which route.
Will other players in the area affect your traps as well? Like set off traps that could cause you to fail?
There are a couple of instances of that where a trap could target someone else, and if you then step into what would have happened, like what would have affected that player, you'll get hurt. We are limiting the number of players that can be in a floor at a time for that reason, because that would just get absolutely chaotic otherwise. But most of the traps are... I think there's only one trap that does that. Most of the traps are individual performance, so...
And what are you currently thinking for XP per hour when it comes to the Hallowed?
That's actually my current job on this working sprint. We've got pretty much everything set in place where we want to go. Everything's implemented. It's a case of me running through and making sure and trying to find out exactly how difficult this is, and then maybe make any changes, slight changes I need to for that. I think the XP needs to reflect the difficulty. If it was really hard, like obscenely hard, like Inferno hard, it would need to be a lot more than current agility XP rates to do it, but it's not going to be that hard, right? It's a case of making sure the player is adequately rewarded for the effort of this mini game. And I wouldn't want to say like, oh, this is never going to be more than 70k XP an hour, which, by the way, it would probably be dead content at that, considering there are methods that get there, like Brimhaven. I wouldn't want to say that and then be forced to make the minigame as easy as what I'd already promised the players. I'm ballpark thinking anywhere from 75 to 80k for those who've hit the fifth floor and can consistently do it. But that's just ballpark. That's what I'm sort of aiming for now. And once I've gone through that original like sort of balancing pass on it, where I'm happy with it, of how difficult it is and how rewarding it is, we'll open that up to the rest of the team. And those rates as well that I've just said, like that's roughly for people doing 92 agility who are consistently doing very well at it, right? This is going to be harder than people I think it is going to be, for especially that fifth floor.
So you're saying it's not Inferno hard, but it's about Fire Cape hard then, considering level 3s can do it.
There's no PVM comparison, right? I think the best comparison would be like, imagine that really difficult, annoying Crash Bandicoot level as a kid, where you can learn it and practice it and get through it, but it is, if you're not perfect with some of your movements, you're going to mess up. So, yeah. And also these numbers mean nothing to the players because they haven't played the content to see how difficult it is, so we'll see. But we are going to be observing it after the week of release. If it's too bad, we'll look to change it. If it's too good, we'll look to nerf it. So yeah.
One last Sepulchre question. Is it a safe death?
No. If you die in that, you lose your hardcore status. I wish that was just a blanket rule. Like, I wish even Fight Caves was like that, personally. But yeah, you're not likely to die. As I said, you take token amounts of damage. I think the most is 8. Don't hold me to that. Please try the content because I might change those numbers before release. But yeah, it's kind of like Pyramid Plunder. If you die to an urn at Pyramid Plunder, it's pretty predictable. But you probably should have teleported out instead of searching the urn at 5 HP, right? So,
someone's going to have clipped the fact that you said 8 damage maximum. Get hit in line and then call you out straight out.
And when that person dies because they didn't listen to the second half of the sentence, more fool them.
So the other thing that we talked about in the Gazette is a settings menu overhaul. Mod Lenny, what sparked the reasoning behind changing the settings menu and putting it into a pop-out style?
So the thing that kind of sparked the discussion in the first place, I believe, was in one of our whole team reviews around the time when I implemented the in-game wiki integration. Obviously, we've got a little toggle in the settings menu for that to enable or disable the icon that lets you sort of look up different entities throughout the world. And right around the same time was when Mod Ash was working on the Tinted Hitsplats job and had similarly added a toggle that enables or disables that. And in this review, we kind of realised, wait a second, we've both just put this button in the exact same place. There's not a whole lot of other places that we can put it. Something's got to go on here. We need to figure this out. And in the past, we've always kind of just shuffled some settings around as and when they come up to make space for a single other toggle. But we wanted a bit more of a long-term solution than that, something that we can just continuously add to without having to constantly shuffle everything around and rework the way that the interfaces are laid out. And so that's kind of how a settings rework in general came about. As for the actual sort of pop-out interface, the modal interface, as we call them internally, that's just came about through the actual sort of design process and looking into what a settings rework would entail and figuring that seems like the most easily expandable way of handling it. So yeah, I guess that's kind of it.
There are some concerns that players won't be able to easily change like combat settings or attack options or volume sliding. Is that something that you could look to try to like change and keep it outside of the settings pop out?
Yeah, so we mentioned in the Gazette that there are certain settings that we want to keep available on sort of the settings side panel, and they're ready to use in a couple of clicks, basically, without having to bring up some interface on top of the game, without blocking off like any other actions, anything like that. Because we know that people do need to be able to access some of these settings quickly, and it is important that they don't get interrupted by bringing some big interface up in the middle of the screen. We've got sort of some ideas in our head already of what settings exactly we need to put there. But if there's any that people think we might be forgetting, any that we might not consider, that you want to make sure you can still access just like that, please do let us know what settings exactly, because we want to make this settings rework as useful for you as it is just easily expandable in the future.
One last question before we move on to Mod Swain. Mod Lenny, can we make a new settings toggle, or rather it be customizable in the settings, so that players can choose which ones are in there and which ones aren't? Is that something that you could look into for the...
So you want a setting to change how the settings look?
That is what some people want, yes.
So yeah, this is something that came up internally as well before we put the Gazette out, and we could do if there's enough sort of desire for it. It's not an insignificant amount of work, so unless kind of there's a real demand for it, it's not something that we'd like to do. But depending on how exactly sort of the idea of this rework goes down, we will consider it. It is a possibility. So please do give us this feedback, and if it's something that you really think you want that toggle there to kind of ease yourself over into the new settings menu, let us know. But it's not sort of a decision that we'll just take lightly and think, oh yeah, no, we can just say, yes, we will have the old version there, and it's, there you go, that's done. It's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, because you would need to put it on both versions, right? You need to keep both versions running, so you'd essentially be doubling any work to add a new setting, which could then run into the same problem that you mentioned before, right?
Yeah.
So.
Mod Swain, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Not about the settings menu or anything like that. I just want to, the chat are getting all happy and spammy. So to answer a couple of questions that are appearing there. !Gazette, one Z, two T's, to see a list of projects we're working on. So a lot of people are asking about, where's Group Ironman, where's Clans? Well, if you visit the link, you'll be able to read an update on those projects. And you'll notice that within that project update, there isn't any work happening on a HD client. So you might spam OSHD and stuff like that. Well, we're not working on it. We've not been working on it in the background. So we don't have any update on that. You might keep spamming, but we don't have anything to say on it. But Clans and Group Ironman, read the project update and you can see what we're working on there.
When we mentioned the Gazette, we actually didn't mention anything about the Death rework that players recently did an opinion poll on. What are our current plans with that rework, if you do know, Swain? And when can we tell players more about it?
Well, off the top of my head, I'm not massively clued in on the specifics of how the content actually works. Anybody else have any input on that?
Yeah, so although the Death rework itself has been sort of very well underway in-house, there's a lot of testing to go on it. It's not sort of ready to release yet. It's obviously not something that we can just throw in lightly. This is a huge thing in the game that we want to be confident in when we release it. And obviously we've also got these things that we've been talking about coming up, like Deadman, and we don't expect the players want us to be changing the way that Death works in the middle of a Deadman tournament. So we're kind of looking at when exactly we're likely to be able to fit in the rework sort of around these events, but also allowing enough time for testing for us to be really confident in it.
It's one of those things where you don't think Death affects everything, but you don't think of how many different updates it can really impact. So it's not just Deadman, it's not just 1v1, but even like the Bounty Hunter update, or even any future content that we want to release. Like even in Darkmire, when Ed was going through the quest with us, it was like, do we add a gravestone or do we not? And trying to figure out what to do. And we're like, oh, we've got to wait, figure it out. So it is a big update that takes a lot to kind of actually put into the game. It's not something that's just one and done.
So some players are concerned about the current server status as well when it comes to death mechanics. I think it's also worth noting that the proposal we pitched and we're working with, it would mean that, should anything bad with the servers happen, that if that does end up killing you, then your grave will persist regardless of you being logged out for any duration of time. So even though the current state of the servers, we've really said we've been under a sustained attack, we're working on that. The attack is still happening. We're doing our best to mitigate it. I think we've seen a great improvement of the service from when the issues happened 2 weeks ago, particularly when it comes to stuff like road hopping as well. There's been an improvement there. But with the death rework, if should something like out of your control, like servers or DDoSing, kill you, then you'll be able to more easily reobtain your items. So I'm not trying to disregard any players' concerns. It's more maybe trying to alleviate it.
It almost might be more helpful to have them because of the timer not going down if you're not logged in. So if you do die, if you do die, your timer just freezes. And I mean, if you're not online, it freezes. So it does help to disconnections or server issues. So one of the questions that was asked was, what are our thoughts on rerunning a Twisted League for those that don't want to do Deadman or a 1v1 tournament during these lockdown times?
I think there's a lot more to it than people realize when it comes to rebooting something like a league. Yes, the code is all still there. It could run. We would need Engine to provide another save game. So currently we have all the save game data saved for people's Twisted League accounts, which we need for when we boot up the new league, because some of their things are carrying over. Like, depending on what rank you got, you're going to get access to potentially rank worlds or to items at the start. Also, like keeping things like people's pets, things that we've promised the players. So we can't just overwrite that game save. I believe we've only got one other save file, which obviously we're going to use for the Deadman tournament. So we would need another one for leagues, right? There's also just the infrastructure behind getting the high scores all up and running. I think I'd also want to make sure that we did what we could to fix any of the issues last time, right? There were a lot of issues with PVM being very underwhelming compared to skilling. Drop rates, people complained a lot about those. I think that I definitely want to spend time polishing it up, and with the current release schedule with Dartmare and even the other teams working on Deadman, I don't really see there's a slot for it to fit in, unfortunately. Not to do it justice, because if we do release it, we could release it in the same state, but we want people who played it last time to say, ooh, it's come back, but it's different and I want to have fun playing it, So if it was exactly the same thing, I don't think it would be as successful.
I think I just heard someone's child crying.
I don't know this one. Anyway, it would also be cool if we could address some of just the basic problems that were with the Twisted League as well. Just some lighter things before doing another thing like that again. Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things where if we do rerun it, do people get rewarded for the time that they've been there? Is another question we have to find out. What do we do about the trophies? Is it just this is fun to do it and you get nothing out of it? Is there ranks? I mean, there's a lot to it. So I think it's more than just let's just turn it on.
Yeah, plus if there's both Deadman and Twisted League running, it would sort of split the player base a little bit between the two, and maybe it would make either of them worse for it.
Yeah, there are definitely people who would like to play both, It's not just as clear cut as people would like one or the other.
I mean, you look at Solo Mission, who played leagues, and who also really enjoys PvP, and most likely will be participating in Deadman. I think it would be a shame to kind of miss out on those types of players that want to do.
It's good though, right? Sorry, on you go.
I think if we consider, so if anyone in the chat has joined us since the beginning, ! COVID, to kind of see what we're talking about, the fact that we're doing stuff around this current situation to give you stuff to play and give you stuff to watch, keep you entertained while you're at home. If we think about why we're doing the things we announced in that news post and why we're considering Twisted League, it's kind of come down to, we're in a really lucky position where we can make lots of people happy who are stuck at home just by doing our job when we're also stuck at home. But what we didn't want to do was really disrupt our release schedule for the rest of the year. I mean, you see people spamming stuff about, where's League 2, where's Group Ironman, where's Clans, when is Darkmire coming out? You just polled it, why is it not out yet? Or you just poll 70 stuff, why haven't you released it all? It's because we're still working on it. I think, while we could say, everybody, drop what you're doing, we're going to react really quickly with some really temporary events. Fast forward 6 months or so, when hopefully this whole situation's died down, I think we'd be kicking ourselves at reacting that way. So all the stuff we're doing now is because, what could we do to help make everybody really happy and keep everybody entertained and engaged, but without massively disrupting what we're working on? And that's what we've been able to do. Like Darkmire is still progressing really nicely. Ash's team is still working on the kind of recent Poll 70 stuff, preparing PvP updates as well. The Bounty Hunter update is coming as planned. We're looking at getting a Poll 71 ready. So what we've been able to do is take Lenny's team and put them on stuff like Deadman. So kind of look at it like this. The release schedule for the rest of the year has barely been impacted, but we've still been able to turn these things around quite quickly. So that's why we're not looking at hurrying out any other type of content. But I don't know, let's say this situation gets worse or persists for a really long time, then maybe we'll continue looking at stuff like maybe like a sort of King of the Skill or another Twisted League League 1 if it gets really, really further in the future. But for now, don't expect anything different to what we've established in that blog, like the 1v1, Deadman, the in-game charity event, which should be really cool, and then the increased live streams, increased JMod in-game events, that kind of stuff.
Mod G and I have an idea for a old school style live stream, not a Q&A style, but a like Pictionary, doing old school Pictionary with the players as an extra thing to do, which I think would be quite.
I think it'd be really fun. I'm really keen on doing like a prop hunt stream as well.
Yeah, the thing you did on Twitter, and only PMods seem to have been able to find you.
How suspicious.
The thing that's really interesting about them all asking for leagues as well is, that's a good thing, right? First, it shows that they really liked what we did when we did the first league. But we've all, like I mentioned a few times, that we need people to miss it before we come out with another one. It's kind of a good feel for us, right? We're seeing a lot more questions come up like 5-ish months later. Sort of gives us maybe a timeline of, what is the appropriate break for this,
Sweet. You mentioned Mod Ash's team, and a player wants to know who is on Mod Ash's team.
Mod Rock, Mod Melee. I don't know. Who's
Mod Oasis?
Mod Oasis.
Mod Oasis, of course it is. Yeah. And I always get confused with the mod names. I'm not getting confused with the people, just the mod names, I promise, if you're listening, between Mod Oasis and Mod Tide, because they started in really, like a really similar point in time.
No. Everyone's just like awkward silence, because no one else does it but you.
Have we ever gone on and actually divulged exactly who's in what team and how they're sort of split up? Because it changes quite a bit.
We were looking at doing something similar to this Gazette. I got sick, so I couldn't pull it together. And we've got some team changes coming up. Like when we shift priority, we're working on clans, and we've got some new devs joining us really soon. I think that'll probably be a better time to give a detailed breakdown of who's who and who does what.
Makes sense.
One of the questions in the chat was for you, Mod West. Are you still working on a Zeah rework where you rearrange some of the areas?
Yeah, I am. I posted a few months ago now. I showed off the rework for Shazian. I have an almost finished Lovakin and Arceus one, just like a Photoshop file. It's nothing like in-game at the moment. That I could show off once it's done in the future. I don't know when that will be done though. I've not really worked on it for a while. I have started making some progress of just doing some blockouts in game. I've got a basic layout of Shazian done during one of my tap days. But yeah, it's pretty much it at the moment. But the plan is to save that for a future project. Yeah, just come along.
Are you interested or keen on doing a live stream, a design stream, where you design it live with the players, the new area?
Oh, I could do. I would like to do a mix of either making areas that will go into the game, but also maybe making a few just sort of like just showing players how we build environments. Because I feel like making an entire city in a few hours might be quite difficult, but making it like a little island with a few little houses here and there just to show them how the map editor works would be quite a nice little stream to do.
Or both.
Oh yeah, or both. Yeah, well, the more the merrier.
Yeah, I think they really enjoyed it. Back before I started working here, I quite enjoyed watching like I think it was design streams that Mod Ghost did when he was designing the Theatre of Blood boss. That was quite cool.
I miss Mod Ghost, I'll be honest.
We all do.
We all do, yeah.
It was a joy to be around.
This Twitch chat question is for you, Mod Husky. Is the Hallowed Sepulchre instance? Will you lose your items if you die?
Well, I was actually hoping that the death rework would be out beforehand, so that would cover that exception. Actually, I think it was just yesterday I was writing the code for that. It'll have an item retrieval system similar to you've seen for like Orcath and things like that. It's not expensive. It's only about 25k. We don't expect people to die in there, but because it is instanced, because that allows us devs to do a lot more with the environment and the traps and mechanics and how they all work. It has to be instanced. It's not a private instance. You'll be in there with like 10 random people. 10's a number we've loosely got right now. We might increase or decrease it depending on performance issues and stuff. But similar to like Tithe Farm, right? You can hop in and you'll just see someone else instance already planting. So yeah, that's where we are with that. You won't lose your stuff, like your items, as long as you don't die before you get back.
It's just another one of those things where we're doing an update and we realize the death rework is not in yet, so now we have to figure out what we're doing. This question is for everyone, and is it possible to add a jar for Olm and Verzik to put in your house? Because we did one for the Nightmare.
It's always possible.
Yeah.
But is it something that you're interested in, I guess?
I think it would have to be almost like an additional drop, because if we were to suddenly introduce it and it gives players less of a chance of getting a scythe or getting a bow, I think they'd be pretty annoyed. And I really had to check myself in swearing then. That's another thing about working remotely, is that the language I'm using now is a lot more casual than it is when I'm in the office or actually in the studio.
Yeah, I got that as well. I would be happy to do like an Olm and Verzik display, but I would be curious to where it ends. So like, would an Olm and Verzik display also give you the options for the other like demi bosses, like the Mardile or Tecton? Would they be included, or would it just be the final boss?
You get a raids display case with all of them in.
That'd be pretty intense.
It's gonna get to the point where we just do like jars on jars, like just every content has a jar at this point.
Maybe we can have an ornament kit for the jar.
Or
Like that.
why not? Instead of a jar in Chambers of Zerk, why not put an ornament kit for the Ancestral that did not go through Twisted Leap? Assuming it passed the poll.
Yeah, I'd love to do that as well. That was a really
so
cool
good.
looking outfit.
It looks so
It
good.
goes, it goes well with the twisted helmet as well. It's just like the perfect combo. So yeah, that'd be cool. Maybe
I
we could do like a raid specific display. So I suppose that, in the future to handle all the demi bosses. Potentially.
You can tell Mod West is like currently thinking how he would arrange the display case if he was to do it.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think, could we fit all bosses in one? It might look a bit cramped. In fact, it would almost certainly hit a poly limit. But yeah, that would be cool.
Do you guys recall the mock-ups with like the Tecton armor and the Warcath armor that someone made a while ago?
Yeah, I remember the Tecton armor. I don't think I saw the Vorkath armor.
No, I don't think I saw either of these.
Just on the subject of like trivial, pointless cosmetics, this kind of sprung to my mind. I absolutely love them. Should I drop them in the Twitch chat just to give you
Drop
a
it in the Twitch chat.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
To answer Rent Boy 1 in the Twitch chat, we didn't. No, it's just his name there, Rent Boy 1. Yes, we do plan to allow you to store League trophies to play your own house. It was something we thought that we'd spoken about. We didn't realise we'd promised it in a blog. to the release of Twisted League. So we were like, oh yeah, we'll do that. It's nice to have for a future league. We could have put it out in a couple of weeks after the Twisted League, but I think we wanted to do a lot more with it and make you have like a league room in your POH or something similar. We want to have a fully fleshed out design, but the intention is that regardless of what we do with that, at about the time we're doing the sort of second league's rewards, we'd like to be able to have you store them in your player own house and be able to display them to other people.
You've just caused that guy to get so many notifications. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like, Mum, I'm famous.
I can see Mod Sweet posted the mock-up armor. It's interesting. I think you're just obsessed with Volcath now because you got the mini model made.
That's true. Well, I loved it anyway. For me, I don't see how this would fit in the game. I just thought it looked cool, and it just triggered my memory. But I'm a huge like Monster Hunter fan, so the idea of like maybe carving up a monster and then using it to create armor appeals to me. I don't know why we do it.
Did you like the Saradominist cudgel?
Sorry?
Did you like the Saradominist cudgel? Because that was what I was thinking
Yeah.
of that, with like, oh, you've got the leg of Saradominist and you smack people with it, because people said how cool those legs looked and they'd be as a weapon. Then we did it. A lot of people said they didn't like it.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people really didn't like the Saradominist cudgel.
But
Or spork, Saradominist spork, as people call it.
Yeah, they didn't really know what it was.
It reminds me of when Mod Ash was like, if we want to give the players cat ears, we should make them use a knife on a pet cat that has to be fully grown, and then they string it into a cat ears.
Where is a necklace? That would be amazing. I mean, looking at this texture on armor, it does look really cool. It's very strange having worked with the old school graphics for so long. I can tell exactly what they made this out of, and it looks like they've adjusted the fourth tier of the achievement diary outfit and then chucked Tecton's head on top of it. I mean, it's efficient use. That's kind of how I model things as well, but I thought that was interesting.
I mean, when you did the shaded beast for the Forthos dungeon, you essentially just reworked the Tarn fight.
Yeah, Tarn Resolute. I took away his tentacles and then just adjusted the asset, to look
Like a Pterodog skull.
Yeah, yeah, it was good.
There's a lot of things where like players do models that don't necessarily can translate into the game. I think one of the ones that a player came up with, the concept art for the Tangle Root recolor, was the Magic Tree one, but then we couldn't do it because of the texture. Is that correct?
Yeah. We don't really have much control over textures as much as we used to, and getting that to work on a character as well, it's usually quite difficult. I had some thoughts of doing it with geometry. The idea we went with in the end was using the best in slot, produce from that type of thing. So hopefully the best trees in the Magic Tree anymore, the best trees in the Redwood Tree. So that was a nice workaround. But yeah, unfortunately textures don't generally work quite well in our engine. Quite limited.
I'm actually genuinely excited for the Tangle Root recolors because I have the pet, but also because I made the pet dialogue. So if it's terrible, you can blame me.
It's good fun making pet dialogue.
There are some interesting references with some of the different recolors. So I'll leave that with the players as a little hint that there might be something. So we're almost out of time. Looking through, looks like we've answered the ones that Mod Tide has gathered. There's one last one here, which says, can we get the current work in progress Darkmire map to be posted? Because they're not sure if there's any changes to the mini map or map since then.
I think I actually leaked this, but sort of teased this a few months ago when I released I sent the player the height map, which is how that height map appeared on Reddit. And I sent out an image to match it, and I obviously rendered it out from the stream I was currently in. So I did sort of give a little bit of a sneak preview of the layout of Darkmire. I can't remember exactly where. Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of knew it would be there. I was just curious if anyone would have noticed. I think Spinewheel would have noticed it because he sees everything. Nothing gets by him, except maybe a few Easter eggs. But yeah, he's I mean, if you message Spinewheel, I'm sure he'll be able to point you towards it. I can't exactly remember where I put it, but I sent it to someone on Reddit, so there's that.
You're going to drive you crazy. And just after working here, there's plenty of Easter eggs you learn about that the players have covered.
Yeah.
I mean, Spinewielder's still trying to figure out your Easter egg mod, Lenny, with the Priff.
Are you really doing this to me right now?
Yeah, it's been like a year almost, hasn't it?
I mean, if we're doing this, I'm going to come out on stream and tell
Oh,
them
no.
there's nothing more there. I told Cook, the wiki admin, this a while back. I mean, I did kind of play along with there being an Easter egg there, I'll admit. But I tried to go easy.
You
Never
made them look for it almost a year and played along with it.
So I played along with the fact that the bells could be heard from other platforms and people could make cool little jingles. Whatever other people took this to mean, I cannot take I mean, I can kind of take responsibility for. I feel bad.
When they're asking what's the Easter egg and you just respond with bells, I mean...
No, you can respond with there is none.
On the flip side, there is a few Easter eggs that I put into Corrend that no one's known.
See, I'm pretty sure every time I've been asked about it, I've kept saying I can neither confirm nor deny that there's anything to be found. I've never said there is something to be found. I just kind of alluded that there might be.
Tonight with your cryptic messaging.
They're all gonna like message you tonight and then just really just be angry with you, I imagine.
To anyone who has been searching for the Bell Easter egg, I am sorry.
And when you message them, include the number of hours you spent, because it'll be really interesting.
Please don't.
So looks like we're gonna wrap up here. Does anyone have anything they want to say before we head?
Oh, someone's asked me to narrow it down. Look towards the north of Corrend. That's what I'm saying.
We had stuff as recent as the Nightmare update that players haven't found yet.
The final of can you hunt the Easter egg?
I mean, it is Easter, so
That's
perfect
true.
time to find them.
But you said north, it was south, wasn't it?
I suppose I'll have to figure that out.
Well, it's been really nice chatting to everyone today. We hope you guys out there are staying safe in this current situation. We know it can be quite difficult without being able to like do things that you normally would do. I know I'm finding it difficult, but we're here for you. We're still running the game. We want to make sure that we give you guys updates, and we're going to stick to that. So, yeah, I think we could all agree on that. But we'll hopefully see you guys next week with cameras if the bandwidth permits. And finally, to go back on our announcements, we've got the Gillinor Gazette that we released yesterday, so you can use !Gazette. This talks about the settings menu overhaul and the Hallowed Sepulchre. We've also got a statement that outlines our plans for continuing developing the game for you and gives you insights on what will be coming in the coming weeks. You can use the !COVID for that. And we've also released an announcement on a 3-day 1v1 tournament. If you want to learn more about that, use !1v1. And that's it for the old school team today.